There's a crisis happening in ufology. Fractures forming like political parties. Dogma, allegations, otherizing. Even our own language has turned against us. It feels like we're no longer speaking to each other, only past each other. This has to stop. The hard conversations have to be had. Because when the truth is this elusive, finding it will never be easy. It will be hard fought. And we won't get there unless we get there together. That's why I wanted to talk to Mick West. I didn't know Mick. I'd only heard the gossip, the soundbites, the gotcha lines. I'd even taken part in that, in moments of emotional whiplash. But for those who don't know, Mick West is arguably the most revered, or perhaps the most hated, skeptic in ufology today. He provokes strong reactions, so strong that I know I may even lose subscribers just for releasing this conversation. But release it I must, because I want to. If you're one of those people already feeling the anger bubble up inside you, pause. Ask yourself, why be angry about a conversation you haven't even heard? Because here's the truth. Mick was gracious with his time. He was eloquent, pleasant, and at the end of all of it, I realized something. Mick and I share the same goal: finding the truth. Our disagreement is simply about how to get there, and maybe how close either of us believes we are. So I invite you to listen to this conversation with an open mind. Take that same curiosity and passion you have for ufology and apply it to the perspective offered here today. Together, maybe we can take the first step toward meeting in the middle, so that someday we can arrive at the truth not as rivals, but as colleagues, friends, and family. As always, if you enjoy this video, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and share. Now, here at the Dreamland Motel, let's have a hard conversation. So, Mick West, of all the people to join me in the Dreamland Motel, you were not at the you were not on the list of people I thought would be interested.
Yeah, so, well, it's I'm glad to be here. I'm happy to talk to anybody. I think the more we, people with different opinions and different experiences can share those opinions and experiences. It's better for everybody. And I'm not fighting people or anything. I'm just out here trying to figure out what's going on.
It's definitely encouraging because it's fair to say of all the people in ufology, you're probably what some people would call one of the four horsemen of ufology.
Who are the other three?
Most definitely Sean Kirkpatrick. He's enemy number one, I think, at the moment. We got I don't know, Neil deGrasse Tyson might be up there. Stephen Greenstreet, and then you've got the people who polarize the landscape, like Stephen Greer. He's kind of a love or hate situation, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I think everybody is, really. It's everyone has their fans, everyone has their critics, and
it's very split at the moment, isn't it?
Indeed. Well, that's just the way of things, I think. Any topic that elicits strong emotions is kind of difficult for people to arrive at consensus with. And ufology especially is a topic that does elicit strong emotions because a lot of it is based on personal experiences that people have had. And so, they get very defensive and angry sometimes, and it's understandable. And then you get differences within the community just because the feelings run so high, because the stakes seem so high. So it's totally understandable that we get these divisions.
On that, actually, I actually need to make a bit of an apology. On X, I don't remember when it was or what even the context was, But I once compared you to the kind of guy that walks past the line for the new Star Wars film, telling everyone you've already seen it and that it's
kind
rubbish.
Of familiar, actually. I think I remember. Well, I guess it would have been you saying that. That was a while back, though.
But I realise now I was probably saying more about people who are interested in ufology than I was about you, because I was kind of saying, in a way, what right is it of yours to really, play on our emotions in that way? But then I've since realised this isn't entertainment. This really does have real life consequences, and
exactly,
like everyone else, you really are just looking for the truth. And I want to know if something is a bird. I want to know if something is a plane. And unfortunately, that can be the case a lot of the time.
Yeah, unfortunately. But you don't want to know what happens at the end of the Star Wars movie when you're in line. So the analogy doesn't really work, but it's kind of interesting. The basic point is that it's a spoiler in a way. Like I'm spoiling the experience for people. And I can see that particular type of pushback a lot on certain kind of subgroups within ufology. On Facebook, there's lots of different groups of people, and some people are more kind of, interested in investigating things and figuring out what things are. And some people are more interested in sharing experiences and to a degree validating those experiences. So you get some groups on Facebook, and I'm sure elsewhere, where no critiques are allowed. So someone posts a video of a dot, like a white light over the horizon coming towards you, you're actually not allowed to say that it might be a plane. And they say things like anybody who says this is a plane or a searchlight or whatever will be banned, because they don't want that. And I think to some people, they feel like it's not really just that they think, oh, you're spoiling our fun. They feel like they've moved past that stage. They think, oh, we don't need to investigate anymore because we already know that these beings or whatever, these orbs, these celestial orbs, magical things are happening. So we don't need to actually investigate whether it's a real thing or it isn't. We need to try to figure out, what it is and how do we communicate with it and what it means. But I think that's kind of, understandable. It's also a bit of a mistake, because that means you're going to get all of these false, even if there are these real things out there, you're going to get all these false positives as well. If you're so reluctant to critically examine things.
That's the thing as well. Like, it's almost as if it doesn't matter what's in the video anymore because we know the truth. And in some ways, it doesn't matter if it's a plane or just a satellite or anything like that. Just the fact that you're now debunking it seems to be sort of an attack on something that they feel they're 100% certain on.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the Chris Bledsoe stuff. He holds CE5 type things, and he points at things which, pretty clearly are just like satellites or they're planes. And when we're actually able to get the date and the time of them, we're able to identify those things. But he pushes back and he won't release the date and the time on things. And his supporters, kind of support him. Like, why would you give this data to the debunkers? But if it is just a plane, wouldn't you want to know? It seems like it's like deliberately blinding yourself to all truths in the search of one truth.
It's a hard thing to deal with, because I am of the firm belief that like 99% of the videos that we see online, they're all very terrestrial objects. And likewise, things like abduction stories and things like that, the human brain is exceptionally complex. It's capable of doing a million things. I saw an interview of yours where you said you had a fever once and you were hallucinating, and at the time, you're a rational person all the time, but at that time, I'm sure you were convinced it was real, because that's just the brain state that you find yourself in.
Yeah, well, it's like when you're dreaming, you generally don't, unless it's kind of a lucid dream. You don't like stop and think, is this real or is this not real? It's just it's the experience that you're in. And when I was, this was quite recently. It was like about a month ago. I had this fever, and I was basically hallucinating like faces in my room. I look across the room and I saw like it was a large plant with these big leaves, and when I stared at it, they kind of morphed into faces that were looking at me. And then I was looking at my hands, and they had these weird black sparky cobwebs around them. And then I started obsessing about this weird bit of code that I thought would solve everything. And then, it didn't. I can't even remember what it was. It was this. It's one of those things. You kind of like when you fall asleep, it's almost like you're in another world. And then when you wake up, your dreams are just beyond reach. You just can't remember it. It's the same type of thing with these fever dreams. Whilst you're in them, it seems like it makes sense, and then you wake up and it doesn't make sense. But I think that where it kind of overlaps more with your actual experiences is where you get these people believing things actually happened. And I think because I knew I had a fever and I knew that these things happen, I'm very familiar with this. I read a lot about it. Recognize what was going on, especially the next day. But you can have these types of hallucinations just falling asleep, and you can actually, or waking up. I used to have these ones where spiders would descend from the ceilings towards me. I don't have those anymore, thankfully, because they were kind of nasty. But it felt real, and if you didn't know, I wasn't having any fever at the time. It just all of a sudden, the giant spider descended from the ceiling whilst I was falling asleep. And so if you had that type of experience, but instead of a spider, you think that there's a being in the room with you and it's talking to you, or you feel like you've been transported somewhere and you don't realize that it's just a hallucination or a dream, you can totally see why people would believe those things. So it's very difficult, I think, to distinguish real experiences from hallucinatory experiences that the brain invents. It's also very difficult for the individual, but for the individual, it's way more difficult because for them, they had the experience and it seems super real. And they were convinced at the time it's real, and they're still convinced now it's real. It's very, very difficult for them to wrap their head around the fact that it might be a hallucination. But we know from years of study of these types of things that these hallucinations happen. And now I had the experience myself of something similar happening. I think it gives me a little bit more empathy for those people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have had exactly the same sort of experience with the faces and things like that. And yeah, at the time it's staggeringly real. It's sometimes more real than real. On the question of evidence itself, so obviously some people take those experiences as evidence, and I'm not here to agree with everything you're saying, by the way.
Right. No, I totally agree. I totally understand that.
Yeah. There are aspects of life that we are discovering new things about all the time. So I'm not trying to say that, everyone that's had one of these experiences is just hallucinating and everything. But the nature of evidence itself, I find, over the last year has really changed. I don't really know what to consider evidence at this point.
Yeah.
So I remember the days of, in fact, I think you mentioned it in your book. I remember the days of Above Top Secret.
Right.
And I was a huge fan of Above Top Secret. And it was always about, we'll get the video one day. The one video that proves it all, we'll get the video of the alien being and the flying saucer. And I'm so sad because I feel like that can now never be a reality. Because even when it shows up, it doesn't mean anything now.
Yeah, I don't think that's entirely true, though. I know, obviously it's very easy to fake videos now, but we've been able to fake videos for a while, and there's been some very good fakes in the past. And we know that this can happen, but we also can have chain of evidence for these things. I think really what would tip the balance, especially for me, will be if you have multiple cameras from independent people showing the same thing. There are lots of events that people have described that really should have been viewable by more than one person. There's a giant black triangle. Stephen Greenstreet tells about this event that he had 2 events, I think, actually, like where he saw giant black triangles when he was standing outside a studio somewhere and he saw this thing fly overhead. Another one, he was just at some traffic lights, and I think it was in daytime, and he saw something that looked like a giant black triangle. And if these things are real, and if some of them are real, or one of them is real, then at some point, I think we'll get video, not just good video from one individual person, but good video from multiple people. And I think that's the lack of that video is still the thing that's really holding back any belief that I have that there is actually something going on. Because there's just so many cameras now, and cameras are so good now. I was talking on Twitter a couple of days ago about how modern cameras are actually better than our eyes in the daytime. So if people are having daytime sightings and they can see something, that means you can actually always record it in better quality than you can see it. So if it's a daytime sighting and people take video of it, if it doesn't show anything, then they didn't see anything. They're not that good at night yet, but it's certainly something that I would expect video of daytime sightings to happen if they were happening, or at least happening with some frequency.
What does that make you think of the Skywatcher footage?
Well, you've seen it. It's just like little dots or things that look like balloons or birds. It's very uncompelling. I think the Skywatcher guys, it's hard to tell about every single person there, but I think a lot of them are people who genuinely believe in what they're doing. I think they believe, the ones that think this, I think they do believe they have psychic powers. I think they do believe that they can summon craft. But, they're not able to get evidence of this, which must be kind of frustrating for them. But they think they have evidence. They have these, here's a tetrahedral something or other, but they show something and it just looks like a balloon. Or they show something that looks like some birds flying by, and they say, here's some tetrahedrons that are pretending to be birds. It really doesn't make sense in terms of like strong evidence. If they have this power, like they claim to have 2 things. Like one is a technological dog whistle where they can press a button and it transmits frequencies or radioisotopes or something, and aliens will come, or beings will come, or something will come. And then they claim that they are able to communicate with these craft and actually take over and steer the craft. This is something that they've said, that they could actually take over and steer the craft. But still no video, even in daytime. Daytime they have video of little white dots in the distance. So I think there's this disconnect between what they believe and what they think is happening and what's actually happening. And I don't know why that is, but I suspect it's just basically very, very strong, essentially wishful thinking and confirmation bias on their part.
I think the videos, more than anything, based on what I understand about them, the videos are really for people like myself, the layman, the people that need something visual to look at. They've consistently talked about data being made available. Do you know?
Yeah, but there isn't any.
Just based on... Well, that's the thing. Like, when that data does appear, if that data does appear, what does that look like for... Does that include, like, radar or, like, working out how fast something is moving? I don't know that data looks like.
It does, exactly. Like, there was actually a leak of Skywatcher data that came out on Reddit. I think they hadn't put the right protections on some directory on their web server or something. And someone got out this video... 3 videos of the same event and a text file of radar data. And the radar data essentially is just showing distance and bearing and various other things, altitude. And I took that data and loaded it into my 3D program SitRec, and I could use that to analyze what was going on. And so I could see where they were. You could figure out where the camera was, and you could see where this object or objects that the radar was picking up, which isn't necessarily the same thing as the thing on the video. It's just what the radar is picking up. And it turned out to be something, I think, about 800 feet high, and I can't remember exactly, but it was moving about 20 miles per hour. So it was something that was entirely consistent with a flock of birds or a bird. And so that's the only data that we've got out of them, which they released by accident, just showed something really mundane.
That's if it's their data, I suppose.
It
I
really
haven't
looks,
seen the
it looked
post.
pretty legitimate to me because the 3 videos seem very similar to other videos that they released. And I think people actually verified it at the time that these files were available before they closed down the directory. So I'm pretty sure that this was actual data from them. But, even if it wasn't, the fact still remains that we don't have any data from them that shows anything anomalous. We have one possible set of data that shows something ordinary, which you would expect. You would expect there to be lots of that. But they'd labeled it as something anomalous. They'd labeled it as a fleet of tetrahedral objects. But it looked like a flock of birds. It was moving just like a flock of birds. And the radar data seemed to corroborate that because it was moving at 20 miles per hour, which at that altitude is birds flapping their wing plus a bit of wind gets you to that speed. So it's a lot of talk and no real evidence. And you don't want to just discount people's stories and experiences, but they're claiming that they're having experiences that should be able to produce evidence, and they're not doing it.
They've talked a lot about the dog whistle. This is the piece of equipment that they say works every time. What do you think? They're just making a mistake with? They're just sort of trying something that nobody else has tried, and therefore maybe seeing because they're looking. I don't know.
It's because they're looking. It's like, why does CE5 work? CE5 works because you're looking at the sky. If you look at the sky, especially when people generally do CE5, which is 1 to 2 hours after sunset, because no one wants to stay up super late, and if you do it any earlier, you can't see the sky, you're going to see satellites. So this is something you'll see for sure, 1 to 2 hours after the sun sets. There's no way you won't see satellites. And yet people are constantly pointing out satellites, and they're misinterpreting them as unidentified objects. If you're in an area that's got lights, like a city, you're going to see birds and possibly bats, things like that flying around in the sky. And this is one of the things that I think Chris Bledsoe's last thing at, the Psy Games, he showed some things. Some of them were satellites, and some of them looked like birds. He was standing on a parking lot next to a hotel, which had lights around it. So you're always going to see things. You're going to see, sometimes you'll see meteorites. Sometimes you will see planes flying around. And it's surprisingly hard for the average person to use sites like Flight Radar 24 to say that this isn't a plane. Often you'll look over there, this kind of angle, like, say just looking up about 10, 20 degrees, and you see a light above the horizon, and you think, oh, there's a light over those trees over there. And it's actually a plane that's about 30 miles away. So you pull up Flight Radar 24 and you say, oh, there's nothing over those trees. So, there's no planes within a mile of here or within 2 miles of here. So it can't be a plane. But people don't realize just how far away planes are. A plane flying overhead is, 30,000 feet is like 5.5 miles straight up. And then it's going to be further away. So it's going to be 10 miles away and 5 miles straight up. It's kind of difficult to wrap your head around the amount of space that's around us and the number of things that can be in that area. So when they press the dog whistle, they're out in the desert. You press a dog whistle, and within an hour you're going to see something. If you didn't press the dog whistle, same things would have shown up.
What do you think is the most dangerous thing happening within ufology? And you're free to interpret the word dangerous however you'd like. Well,
I think ufology is one of those subjects that I've always kind of considered to be mostly harmless. It's not like people are selling their houses because they think aliens are going to come down. But that does happen actually. At Heaven's Gate, obviously, is a good example. People thought that
it was on my list of things to mention.
Yeah, it does happen. So it's a possibility, but I think it's a very small number of people. It's not we're going to get thousands of people. We will get cults in the future, and we will get suicide cults, and these things will happen again. It's just inevitable. It's just part of human nature. But I don't think that's like a huge part, and it's not like we should tarnish ufology as a whole with things like that because it's a very minor thing and it would happen in many different fields. I think for me personally, I think the danger of ufology is that it encourages a rejection of science and scientific, I kind of hesitate to use the word authority, but, established science.
The method.
Not just the scientific method, because people will still try to use that, but the scientific establishment and what's currently accepted as science. And so they reject things like what the government's position on UFOs is. So they reject Arrow, which is in itself a dangerous thing. But then you start rejecting other things, which are very well established as scientifically valid. There are things like climate change, the role of CO2 in climate change versus like the role of the sun and things like that. Things that are very well understood. You start believing in other conspiracy theories like, say, chemtrails and things like that, which are, even less based in reality than some of the UFO conspiracy theories. And I know it's a contentious topic, but vaccines, I think that the established science on vaccines show that they're very safe and that they work. And the rise of people like RFK Jr. has both caused and been caused by essentially conspiracy theory belief, which is bolstered by things like ufology, conspiracy theories about the government covering things up. Not necessarily belief about things flying around in the sky or being visited by things, but belief in conspiracy theories. So I see this kind of rejection of science as being the most dangerous thing. But all that said, I don't think it's a huge issue. I don't think it's like the biggest, most important thing that's going on right now in the world. It's just something that it would be better if people weren't so believing in things that weren't scientific. But that's not going to change. People have been religious for thousands of years, and that's going to continue. It's just part of human nature.
The correlation, and I should say as well, I've mentioned this in an episode that's actually coming out tomorrow. I do mention a bit of a correlation between religion and ufology. I do think of myself as quite a reasonable human. There is part of me that is just so fascinated in this topic that I will give things the benefit of the doubt a lot more than perhaps I would otherwise. So you've mentioned Chris Bledsoe. Like I don't know where to put him personally, but it's fair to say he has the benefit of the doubt for me right now. Likely because, he's put himself on a time limit for next year. He's made a prediction for next year, and if that doesn't happen, then as far as I'm concerned, that will be the end of his story. And no doubt, if the goalposts do get moved, there will be people that move with those goalposts, no problem. Yeah. I'm trying to find a question here, but I think... okay, here's a good idea then. I'm going to go to Bob Lazar for a second.
Okay.
The Bob Lazar, the original whistleblower. There's been a couple of times in his past where people have said, he said that long before it was ever found out to be true. So like they say it about the existence of element 115.
Right.
I know that logically element 115 was already proposed to be, it's theoretically a possible element. So he cannot claim, and nor does he. He doesn't claim that, well, I told you. He doesn't say that. In fact, to the contrary, he does say, well, that was always predicted. He did the same for gravity waves. And again, that was already a theory by the time he was talking about it, albeit I don't think it was a very popular theory in comparison to the standard, I think they called it like gravitons or something. But again, several years later, we found out that, yes, gravity does behave like a wave. I wonder how you would react if we found out that S4 was a real place. Because he said he worked at a place called S4, not Area 51. As far as I'm concerned, he was the first person to ever mention S4. A couple of other people have mentioned it since. I'm wondering if you would view that as evidence, per se. Would you find it interesting?
Well, if there's a place called S4, like, yeah, but like, Bob Lazar, we know he worked essentially at Area 51.
Hmm.
He definitely worked in some areas of that. So him going to a particular area within that base or near that base, or in by the lake, it wouldn't be hugely surprising. I mean, these things themselves are just like logistical things. What would be interesting is if there was actually something amazing going on there. If there was evidence that they had crashed flying saucers there, or if there's evidence that they were working on anti-gravity drives and they did experiments with anti-gravity, like that stuff. Using a fragment of truth from his story, like he worked at Area 51, which he kind of did, is sometimes used to say, well, he was right about this, so he must be right about the other things. But the two things don't follow. You can kind of build a story upon truths and then exaggerate what's going on. So, yeah, having another fairly mundane thing.
Would it raise an eyebrow at least?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it depends how interesting this S4 place actually was. If S4 is just some depot by the lake where they stored their jeeps or something like that, and he'd been there, then no. I totally made that up. That isn't something that I know.
Oh, the comments. The comments. I can see them already.
So I don't really feel like it would raise an eyebrow, but it depends. I can't really say.
I know it's a
Without
hypothetical.
giving the details of what's actually revealed. Like if you went to a place that was called S4, and that's something he claimed, and people have denied S4 even exists, then yeah, maybe like that adds a little bit to his validity, but not a lot. It's just one more thing.
Let me pivot to another example of his then maybe.
Okay.
He says there's two kinds of gravity. He says there's gravity A and gravity B,
Right.
macro and microscopic or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. Would that raise an eyebrow if that turned out to be true, obviously?
Yeah, I think like what he's describing there is just kind of a bastardized version of the current like four forces model that we have of the universe. Electrical force, weak and strong nuclear force, and gravity.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of, I think, taking like the weak nuclear force and saying that's gravity B or something like that. I don't think I mean, sure, if the entire science of our gravity study was revolutionized and we discovered that we actually have five forces, gravity A and gravity B being two of them, then yeah, that would be pretty interesting. So
Eyebrows
bring it.
raised. Mick West's
Let's see.
eyebrows
Let's see
raised.
indeed. Yeah. So with the element 115 thing, what he did there was an extrapolation of what we already know. And yeah, if he does something like, say, gravity is split into two forces, it's kind of an extrapolation of what we already know about how the physics works. We have four forces right now. What if there's a fifth force? It's just kind of a little extrapolation. I think it's pretty unlikely that he's right on that one because, with element 115, all he was doing was filling in the holes, and we knew that there were holes to be filled. There isn't really any evidence of this extra force, this fifth force of nature. So I think probably the most likely thing there is that he was just kind of using his own knowledge of physics and kind of riffing upon the existing four forces and just changing things around a bit. And I very much doubt that's going to come to pass. But if it does, yeah, kudos to him.
If it does, yeah, the eyebrows will be raised.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks for playing the hypothetical game with me, by the way.
No worries. I mean, hypotheticals are, in the way, the basis of hypotheses, which is it's kind of a thought experiment. What if? And a lot of the times it doesn't make sense to say what if, but sometimes it does. What if anti-gravity was real? What are the consequences of it?
Faster than light travel. What do you think about that?
It would be great. It'd be awesome. Like, I'd love it if we had faster than light travel. You could visit the stars. Humanity could spread around the universe very, very quickly. And it just doesn't seem like it really tallies with current physics. I mean, there's ways that you can kind of mathematically say that you can do it with the Alcubierre drive, where you locally fold space and then travel through the folded space in a way that supposedly makes sense on a mathematical level, except that when you arrive at your destination, you release a huge burst of gamma radiation, which kills everything within 2 light years. But mathematically, it seems somewhat possible. But yeah, I'd love it if it was true.
I had another question, like, do you want to be wrong?
On that, yeah, I want to be wrong about free energy. I mean, I'd love it if like free energy was a real thing, like over unity energy and all those types of things where if we could reduce the dependence on fossil fuels, if we could actually get free energy for everybody, that would be great. Obviously, it would be very big change for the world, but I think long term it would be a wonderful thing because we're going to run out of oil eventually. We could probably get by on solar and wind and nuclear, but that's something I would definitely like to be wrong about. I mean, I'd like to be wrong about visiting aliens. I'd like to find evidence that aliens have visited or are visiting us right now. I'd like to communicate with aliens. I'd like to see humanity communicate with alien races. I'd like to see humanity visit other worlds where aliens exist. I'm a big science fiction fan. I read a lot of science fiction when I read. I'm reading, what is it now? Red Mars? Yeah, I think it's Red Mars. Getting confused. There's Red Rising and there's Red Mars. Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson. It's basically about early colonization attempts on Mars. I'm not sure there's any aliens in it, though. But I love the Ian Banks series of books, the culture novels. Lots of aliens in those. I was a big reader of 2000 AD when I was a kid back in England. So lots of aliens there. So I love that type of stuff, and that's kind of why I'm interested in UFOs to a degree. I just find the topic so fascinating. And the thought that it might be real is really enticing. But it's one of those things that you want there to be life after death. You want there to be more to this world than the other, and I think that desire can push you into believing that is true when the evidence really doesn't hold up.
One way or the other, you're falling on one side of the line. I fall on the other side of the line. But do you consider yourself a ufologist?
Well, yeah. I mean, I study UFOs. It depends on your definition of the word, though. I mean, some people say a ufologist is someone who studies the history of UFOs, and so you must be able to recite every single fact about Roswell and Rendlesham and the other various things, the Ariel School and all those different places. You should know all that, and I kind of do to a certain degree now because it just comes up a lot. But my interest in UFOs is actually analyzing individual cases and trying to figure out what's going on. And I enjoy using my skills of programming and maths to figure out what's going on. But I find the whole subject interesting. So I don't see any problem being called a ufologist. Others might, but I don't.
To be honest, I would class you as a ufologist. There might be this sort of connotation that if you're a ufologist, you must believe in UFOs in some way, but...
Well, I do believe in them. I mean, UFOs are real. You see them. But this is the thing, are you a non-human intelligentologist, or are you an alienologist? Are you someone who believes that aliens are visiting us? And just because you're a UFO person doesn't mean that you believe that UFOs are a particular thing. I think UFOs are most, if not all, misidentifications of a wide variety of different things, combined with some hoaxes and fakes and things like that, and with a small possibility that there's something really interesting there. I won't dismiss that possibility, but what I do is investigate cases, and every case that I've investigated that has sufficient information that I feel to make a determination, it turns out not to be an interesting thing. Well, sometimes they're kind of interesting, but they're not interesting in an alien or whatever way. So it's just kind of my belief is based on my own experiences and my looking at the evidence.
The one conclusion I do absolutely have is if they do exist, they clearly don't want us to know that they exist.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's almost like, but that's almost like a get out of jail free card for ufology. It's like, well, if there was a civilization that's 1 million years more advanced than us that didn't want to be seen, then you wouldn't be able to take photos of it. But it doesn't really tally with people actually seeing them. Mm-hmm. Now you'd have to posit something really weird, which is that aliens can let people see them with their eyes and have all these encounters with them, but they're somehow immune to all types of cameras, film cameras, digital cameras, all different types of cameras, different types of cell phones, DLSRs, video cameras, different types of sensor chips, probably like pinhole cameras and all kinds of things. Like, you just can't get good photos of them. And people argue that this is these super advanced beings making it that way. But if you're going to argue that, you're essentially arguing that there's a power in the universe local to us that is capable of altering the very fabric of reality. And once you go down that road, it's basically anything goes. What are you basing your beliefs on if the entirety of reality is fabricated at the whim of these incredibly powerful beings? You're claiming that you're living in a dream of some alien, essentially. And so why do you believe certain things? Why do you think that aliens are communicating with you and yet simultaneously preventing the world from having any evidence of this communication? Why do they go to the aerial school and talk to children and yet no one saw them come down and there was no adults to actually see it and no one had a camera? Why do these things happen like this? It's like you might as well be living in a simulation where everything is arbitrary. Why would you believe in anything? What's the actual basis of your belief?
That's certainly a growing opinion, to be honest. Talking from the other side, I'm well aware that people really are. We've dived into the whole psionics thing over the last year.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that really things are getting weird. I think it's a bit of a quote on the podcast that I produce for that. Things are getting weirder and weirder, and that's it's a growing theme within ufology, is that everything's starting to become a bit of a playground, and we're just the subjects of, you could call it a zoo, prison. They're age-old hypotheses.
But why do you believe anything? It's like, what do you think reality is? I mean, am I real? Am I just an AI? Am I an artifact of a transdimensional trickster that's talking to you? If you're opening yourself up to these beliefs that everything is weird and nothing is real, then what are you actually believing in? What do you base your life on? How do you make your daily decisions? You're still essentially an evidence-based person.
Mm-hmm.
You make your decisions about what you do based on what you know from past experience. If you use a glass and pour water in it, the glass will stay in the water. It won't turn into a bunch of fairy dust. You know there's this empirical way of looking at the world where you have experiences and you measure them and you see what happens. And yet there's also this other world that you're positing where there's these magical things happening that you somehow can't get evidence of, but you believe them to be true. And the question is, like, why do you believe them to be true? What are you basing that on? Is there actual evidence that you're basing it on? Or is it just a philosophical belief or an emotional belief or a psychological thing? I mean, do you feel like your belief is evidence-based when it comes to the more esoteric aspects of it, like the Skywatcher stuff?
So if you're asking me personally...
yeah, sure.
I would say, I think it's a valid question for everyone who has a belief in this sort of thing. I don't base my belief on video evidence, that I know that much to be true. I personally accept a lot of first-hand testimony and the testimony of David Grush, and you've said before that those people absolutely might believe what they're saying. You've said that the crash retrieval programs may well exist, but that they may falsely believe that they're retrieving alien vehicles. They may just be on a crash retrieval program, retrieving things they don't understand, and they're making that connection themselves.
Yeah, Chinese and Russian stuff.
Yeah. I still probably have a little bit of potentially too much faith in humans to be able to perceive what's going on in front of them. So Jake Barber, he said he piloted the helicopter that was transporting this egg. And we made a joke about this on the podcast last week, actually. Like, what if he was a disinfo agent and he was in a room with 5 other guys and thought and just came up with the idea of trying to fool everyone into thinking this egg was a UFO? Because the video does look like an egg. It does. But there's the human experience there that I'm not quite willing to let go of just yet.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to make you let go of anything. I mean, I say, like, I think what I encourage people to do is kind of try to be evidence-based. I think a lot of people, though, obviously you got your personal experience, which is in some ways the primary thing on which you base everything else. I mean, my experience of the universe is what I base my belief about the universe on, essentially, because I read things and I see things and I do experiments with things and I eat and drink and do whatever. So it's always going to be your primary thing. But then there's other people, and they tell you things, and in some ways that becomes like this primary /2, like secondary really, but like it's still that same type of thing, because you have your own experience as being a primary experience and direct. You kind of interpret other people's experience as being the same thing, but it's really only a primary for them. But you're kind of transferring that to be a primary for you. Like you're taking their experiences and you say, this person experienced that, and if I experienced that, then I would believe this, therefore I believe this. But you don't actually know what they experienced. You've got this huge void between your brains and what their memories and their actual experience, which you have to kind of bridge with language and drawing pictures and things like that, and communication. So you can't actually experience what they experience, and you can't use their experience as the same kind of basis of what reality is as you do your own experience. And then you got on top of all that stuff, or to the side of all that stuff, you got shared empirical evidence, like experiments that people have done on the world to validate what's actually going on. Recordings that people make, objective things like videos that are taken at high fidelity and things like that, or measurements that are taken, actual kind of objective stuff. And we can all use those as things that we can't argue, like this didn't happen because here's the strong evidence. And I guess what I'm trying to do is try to make people see that the experiences of other people, whilst they're valid for them in the context of them forming their beliefs about the universe, they're valid. They're not always going to be valid for you, because you don't actually know what they are. You're just knowing this kind of distorted version of that. But then we also have all this empirical evidence, like videos, which is actually hard evidence and does actually show things, and we can test it and we can look at it in multiple different ways and do analysis on it, and we have the exact bytes and the pixels and everything. So I'm just trying to kind of, I guess, maybe boost empirical evidence over anecdotal evidence to a degree.
I don't think that's a bad idea, I have to be honest. I think the testimony is getting better and better. And, we're getting a lot of interest in with public hearings and things like that. And I think those are very, very important. But even if we get a first-hand, let's call him a whistleblower, in a hearing under oath saying these things, and saying what they truly believe to be real, whilst 10 years ago that may have been earth-shattering, maybe we were wrong 10 years ago by assuming that it would be earth-shattering, because nothing, as you've said in podcasts since Grush came out, and I know he's not a first-hand whistleblower, but I think he's very compelling with what he says. Nothing has really changed, and certainly the government isn't any more clear on what its objectives are, as far as we know at the moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, the government is a big, crappy bureaucracy. Basically, it's don't want to expect too much from them, and even Arrow, it's not the fastest moving or best organization. Like Sean Kirkpatrick has said a bunch of things which I just think are ridiculous and wrong, and it's the.
Can you name one? Just for the audience to get something that they want to hear.
Well, he thought that like the gimbal sighting was during the day, when it was actually at night. He had this theory of one of the objects that they saw being a lighting balloon, because it looked like it was light on the top and dark on the bottom, and he found these lighting balloons that are dark on the top and light on the bottom, and he kind of pushed that forward as being the explanation. And I've heard him talk. People have related that he's in private described things like the gimbal object in certain ways where he didn't really understand what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Someone that's not paying attention to the job he was given.
The thing is, I think he's a scientist and he's a manager. And I think his job at Arrow was really more of a manager, like setting up the organization. That was what he was tasked with, standing up. That's what they describe it, standing up the organization. And he did a reasonable job of that. He got it running, and now they're doing quite good work. I think they're going through their cases. They're hindered hugely by the secrecy and what they can release. But his familiarity with individual cases, I think, wasn't as big as he thought it was, and so he would say things that just kind of didn't really make sense about things like the Aguadilla case, the Puerto Rico case, or the gimbal case, or Go Fast. And other people have said the same thing, not saying the same thing, but similar things. Like there was the chairman of the NASA UAP committee. Like he gave this description of the internal workings of an FLIR system, and it was kind of ridiculous. It was something to do with like there being strings inside it, or cables. The cables inside it, they got tangled up, and so it had to rotate back the other way, which was nothing at all to do with what was actually going on screen. But people are talented people, and they sometimes go into subjects and they give their opinions based on what they don't realize is a superficial understanding of the topic. There was a video today, Ross Coulthart, I think it was yesterday, interviewing a couple of guys, Dave Falch and someone else, about the Aguadilla case, the Puerto Rico case, where it looks like there's an object flying and goes underwater, splits into two, which multiple analyses have shown that the most simplest explanation is that it's just an object moving with the wind. If you do the line of sight analysis, it shows that. And if you look at the thermal signature of the object, it looks like two sky lanterns, like these Chinese lanterns, kind of moving around, and they eventually separate. And a lot of people kind of agree with that, and even a lot of ufologists agree with that. But he was interviewing these two people and presenting them as experts, and they really didn't understand the case, and yet they pontificated upon it because they felt that they were experts. And I think you get a lot of that happening even within government and places like Arrow.
So clearly, crash retrieval programs, they exist.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to UAP crash retrieval programs, what's your stance on that?
Well, I don't know of any evidence that they exist, but people say they exist. Like people like Dave Grush says that there's UFO crash retrieval programs. Now, I think what might be happening is that there's a number of possibilities. I mean, one is that alien spaceships have been crashing on Earth on a fairly regular basis, and so the government set up a body to retrieve them, and it's got like a special team that goes around the world whenever one crashes and gets these UFOs, so no one ever discovers them, which is pretty magical, really. I don't think that's very likely. Another possibility is that there is something that we know exists, which is foreign technology exploitation. And there's an organization called NASIX, the National Aeronautic Intelligence something Command. I don't know where it is exactly, NASIX. But they're a big organization, and they used to be called the Foreign Technology Exploitation Group. And basically, it was the department of the military, the Pentagon essentially, which would study foreign technology and either try to use it to improve our technology or develop countermeasures so that we could attack them. So if you were able to do something like get a Soviet MiG fighter, like say one crashed in another country and you're able to retrieve it, they would take that back to wherever it was, and they would take it to pieces, and they would analyze it, and they would rebuild it, and then they would fly it, and then they would figure out, how do we fight this thing? And Or are there any cool tricks that they have here that we can use? And this stuff is super secret because you don't want your adversaries to know what you have. And because if they know that you have this technology, then they would stop using it, or they would use it in a different way. I don't know if you're familiar with the story of the Enigma device that the Germans had. And that's a very good example of essentially crash recovery and foreign technology exploitation. Back in World War II, they had these really amazing cryptographic machines that the Germans did that they used to communicate with the U-boats, the submarines. And eventually the Allies were able to capture one, and they took it to GCHQ in Bletchley, I think.
It was Bletchley.
And I think, was it John Nash was working on it?
Alan Turing.
No, it's Turing. Yeah, it's Turing. Yeah.
I've tried to get my wife to go to Bletchley on several occasions. She's not interested enough in going, but I really want to go.
Yeah, and so they cracked the code, but they didn't want people to know that they cracked the code. So the whole recovery thing was top secret. Everything in Bletchley was top secret. And then they started intercepting messages where they were going to sink a ship or something. And then they had to decide, do we stop this ship from being sunk? Because if we do, then they'll figure out that we know the code. And they thought it was more important to win the war than it was to save the lives of these people that they could have saved in that moment. So these stakes are so huge when it comes to war and military and things like that. And we are in a situation now where we consider states like Russia and China, and we always have to a degree, to be our adversaries and our competition. And so the same type of level of secrecy exists. It's very compartmentalized. People who go to work in these things, it's like in the Manhattan Project, the women who ran the centrifuges had no idea what they were actually doing because it was all top secret, and everything becomes compartmentalized. And so I think these programs definitely exist in terms of reverse engineering, and it's very plausible that some people might have grown to think that they were alien recovery crash, or non-human intelligence crash recovery. It's also possible that there actually were some non-human intelligence crash recovery programs in the history of the United States, because there have been weird things happening within the US military, like Project Stargate, where they actually tried to develop psychic powers. Hal Puthoff was part of that. And he's still around now, obviously. So if they did things like Project Stargate, and they did things like financing the research at Skinwalker Ranch with the ORSAP program, which was essentially like studying UFOs, who's to say that there wasn't a crash recovery program that was developed to recover UFOs? If people thought that was happening, it wouldn't surprise me, and that might be something that the military is a little bit embarrassed about, and they don't want to.
You've got to give me a win here. I think that makes you a conspiracy theorist for crash retrieval programs.
Well, conspiracies are real, and we know that there are secret programs. Just because Project Stargate was real doesn't mean it's a conspiracy theory. It's just a project that actually happened.
You've got to give me something. Come on.
Conspiracy theories are where you're theorizing that you believe that something happened without great evidence that it actually happened.
You can't give me one thing.
You can say I'm a conspiracy theorist because it's... But in my book, the opening paragraph of my introduction is conspiracy theories are very real, of course. And then I list a whole bunch of different conspiracy theories. Conspiracies are real. Conspiracy theories are not known to be real, but they might be.
Do you think someone can have a healthy belief in the presence of NHI on Earth?
I think it depends on the details. I think, if you say, I believe in the possibility of ancient aliens visiting Earth and influencing human evolution or human civilization, or even just prehistory, there being some kind of artifacts, like you found these 2 million-year-old tiny little spheres in a volcano or something that predates all human history, then that it's not unhealthy. It's just a way of kind of interpreting the evidence and perhaps focusing too much on certain types of evidence. You think the Sphinx looks a certain way. Is it actually older than it is? Other archaeologists say no, but I think it looks like a tide mark, so it must have been 10,000 years older than it is, and therefore the technology wouldn't have existed. Therefore, it must have been non-human. you can go down these kind of rabbit holes. I don't think it's necessarily unhealthy. It's just kind of like an active imagination, an active scientific hypothesis engine. So long as you don't go down the road to where you believe it to be true absolutely 100%, and you try to convince everybody all the time, and then it kind of becomes a bit of an obsession and perhaps unhealthy. And like with aliens visiting right now, I hold out the possibility that some of the lights that we see in the sky might actually be aliens. I don't think it's very likely. I don't think there's any really good evidence of it, but you can't dismiss it as a possibility. Then there's these older things like this study of these transients in this sky survey.
The Palomar Sky Survey, yes.
Yeah. And that's from the 1950s, before we had satellites. They saw, on the photographic plates, these transient lights. It'd be cool if that was actually evidence of visiting aliens or an alien satellite network or something like that. But then, where did they all go after we started putting satellites up there? Why can't we detect anything there now? Did they all scarper as soon as we got into space? Or is it just a misinterpretation of the data? Is it more to do with cosmic ray incidences and defects in the film?
Unfortunately, as well, that played so perfectly into the Menzel gap. I've forgotten his first name, Menzel from Harvard. Donald H. Menzel, I think, ordered the destruction of plates and things. So that plays really well into that. But have you...
A big cover up. I don't know the details of that, so I can't really comment on that. I should look into that because people bring it up.
I don't want to take much more of your time, but because you brought it up, have you had a look at the Beatrice Villarreal's
not a deep look.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting. I mean, she's kind of obsessed by it. Like, she's released like 20 papers or something on it. It's quite remarkable just how much work she's put into it. Some of the claims that are made are, on the face of it, mathematically valid. Like, you're coming out with this sigma value, like sigma 20. You see things like sigma 7 is like great evidence. So sigma 20 is like, it's like a magnitude 7 earthquake versus a magnitude 20 earthquake, which would be ridiculous. But yeah, like they're mathematically valid, but is the underlying data and the underlying assumptions valid? Like, one thing she does is study like whether these transients happen in the shadow of the Earth. Mm-hmm. But that's something that should be independently verifiable fairly easily, because we know where the Earth was on certain dates. And if she has the data of where these transients were, where they were looking in the sky, what time exactly was the photo taken, we can check the math that she was using to see if that was valid. But she doesn't publish that math. She doesn't publish the data. She doesn't publish the code that was used to do these calculations. She just publishes the conclusion, and she says, like, so many of them were outside, so many were inside. There's a base of 100,000, therefore it's sigma 20, which is valid with those numbers, but we don't know if those numbers are accurate. So I think she's making a lot of very interesting claims, and it's not yet validated. It would be very cool if it's true, if these transients did exist in some way, and it's either some kind of natural thing that's amazing and new, or it's some kind of artificial thing that's amazing. But I'm skeptical, which is my first reaction. My reaction.
What? Mick West is skeptical?
Well, I'm a coder. I can validate the data. If she releases the code, I can rebuild it and run it. I can check the math. I know math, and it's not that complicated. I've done things. I have a satellite simulation in SITREC where it calculates whether a satellite is in the Earth's shadow or not, with umbra and penumbra and atmospheric refraction amounts. So I can do these things, and I've done them. I could probably drop her data set into SITREC and do a little tweak and have it like display it all graphically. But we don't have the data, and we don't have the code, and we don't have the math. So until that comes out and until that's been validated, I remain skeptical.
We'll come back to that as a last question. I just want to say something in regards to Beatrice's interpretation of what the stuff she's released. So I'm a complete layman with this stuff. I'm reasonably smart, but like I'm not trained in mathematics or physics or anything like that. So for me, it was, and I'm sure it's the same for hundreds, if not thousands, of other people that read the paper. It's just a case of, okay, there's one more thing in the sky I don't understand, and I add that to the other 999 things that I don't understand. So for me, I need sort of carrying through to the conclusion that I agree she seems to have reached, and I hope that that's something that she does touch upon soon. I need to see this stuff in context of her knowledge, not mine, because my knowledge is non-existent, whereas she's quite accomplished in what she does. So I need to see why she finds this so earth-shattering. I found it really interesting, absolutely, but earth-shattering, I struggle.
Sure. I mean, you could view it as just other things in the sky you don't understand, but what she's saying is, here's hard evidence, here's irrefutable evidence of something bizarre. So that isn't the same as just saying, like, here's a video of a light in the sky. It's like saying, here's something that cannot possibly exist with our understanding of known science. We're seeing glints in the sky where there should be no glints. It's either something reflecting off the sun, or it's some kind of actual burst of radiation or something like that. It appears to be objects in near-Earth orbit based on this shadow analysis. So the only conclusion is that it's like essentially artificial satellites or some unknown physical phenomena that somehow went away after we went into space. And she claims to have this very, very specific hard evidence. These plates with dates. When you have take a picture of the sky, you have what's called the right ascension and the declination, the RA and the dec. It's kind of the coordinates in the sky. You can combine that with the date to find exactly where you're looking at in the star field, what would be there, what you would expect to see. You can kind of recreate these photos in a program like Stellarium. And you can figure out where these objects might be in 3D space. And if what she's saying is correct, this will be independently validatable easily. You could easily validate that these things are correct, that there is this 20 sigma correlation with the shadows, which would rule out photographic anomalies. I'm not sure if it would rule out cosmic rays, but it would rule out photographic anomalies as a cause. So she's making these specific claims, which go way beyond anything else that we've had in terms of actual evidence. So, I'd be a bit more hopeful if I were you about
eyebrows
this, because it is actually something that, if it pans out, it's very significant. I just I don't think it will, but we'll see.
Well, I hope you're wrong, and
it's not like I can't stop it. I can't stop it panning out,
and nor would you. And I think that's probably where I want to finish. Like, as I said when we first started this, you've kind of been you're one of the four horsemen. You're public enemy number one within ufology, and there's an outward perception of you, and there's sort of the private perception. Everyone I know, when I talk to privately, they say, "Oh well, I have nothing against the guy. To be fair, I think he's probably doing the right thing." I think you're maybe a product of the environment that we're in. We are. Ufology has gone off the deep end on a few occasions, and we need somebody such as yourself to really be a voice of reason. And I already know that I'm going to receive some backlash for releasing a conversation like this, and I think that's a shame, because realistically our goals are exactly the same. We both actually, as you've said tonight, want this to be real. It's just that we have different standards of evidence. So I think, have you heard of the conspiracy called the Great Reset?
It sounds familiar.
It's like a big financial kind of...
Oh, right, yeah, like an actual civilization reset type thing.
Getting rid of money and things like that. I think we need a great reset within ufology. I think we need to really set the standard for what evidence should be going forward. Because I have my standard, other people have their standard. Let's get Mick West's standard, so that arguably, if we can please Mick West with something, we can probably please everybody else with something.
Probably, yeah. And I don't think you want to focus on me though necessarily. Maybe I'm the person who engages with ufologists, so I'm available. But there's a lot of scientists out there that if these things were real, will be very interested in them. I know there's this perceived stigma of ufologists, but there's millions of people out there. You're going to find some people who will be interested. There's millions of students out there who have the capability to do these things, and it shouldn't be that hard to find people to actually look at it and study it. And I'm doing it because I find it interesting. Other people will also do it because they find it interesting. I'm actually kind of surprised there aren't more people doing it because it's a fun topic to look at. But I think it's going to continue. I don't think there's going to be a great reset. I think it's what's going to happen over the next 10, 20 years is the old guard will fade away and pass away, and new people will come along. We may have other problems to worry about in the world at that point with societal changes and the ascension of AI. But I think that ufology is kind of a belief that there's something there. Unless a good set of evidence comes out, I don't think it's going to change. I don't think it's going to reset. The only thing that's going to reset it is the thing that actually will take it to the next level, which will be good evidence of non-human intelligence. And whilst I'd love to see that, I'm not too optimistic about it.
But what is that? I think is a good question now because of things like AI.
Yeah. Oh, like I said earlier, we could fake videos before, but can you fake multiple videos from different people? Yeah, you can. But can you actually get these people to take the stand and say, yeah, I took this video, and here's my testimony, and other people come forward. Here's my cell phone video of this thing, an event that's viewed by multiple people and recorded by multiple people, or even just an event that's recorded by multiple sensors from the military. We hear tell of such things, but we never actually see it. We hear that there was a thing that was on video and on radar, but if you can correlate these things, then that's evidence of something amazing. If you have two videos of something in the sky and one shows it moving like this, you don't know if it's a bug flying around or if it's a flying saucer flying around. But if you've got another video that's half a mile over here, pointed over here, and it also shows the same thing but from a different angle in the same period of sky, region of sky, then you know that it's real. So better data better multi-sensor data will actually give you very strong evidence of advanced technology. And we just do not have that right now. We have some ambiguous videos and we have cool and compelling testimony from people, but we don't have unambiguous data that proves it, and that's what people really should be focusing on, trying to find and trying to produce.
Mick, thank you very much for joining me.
It's
a very hard conversation to have, but
do you feel like shouting at me at various points?
Absolutely not. No. Honestly, this is a really important question to answer. It's up there with what happens after death. And I'm interested in the truth more than anything else. Yeah. And I still disagree. I don't know if you've seen the same things that I have. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. And that goes back to your personal experience argument that you had earlier. We are different people. We have different opinions. But I think our standard of evidence, the standard of evidence that you just mentioned, is a reasonable standard to take for anybody that is being introduced to the topic. Absolutely. We need this to continue, and we need the conversation to continue more than anything else. And I'm glad that you showed up. Like it's we do need you in ufology as much as we like to hate you.
Yeah, well, I'm enjoying I enjoy interacting with people in ufology, and I enjoy doing the analysis, and I'm going to keep doing that. And if people want to send me their UFO videos, and I'll be happy to take a look at. People sometimes send me things privately, and I analyze them privately as well. So I kind of do it because I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy helping people. And I think the more we understand about the topic in terms of what things are and are not, the better chance we have of figuring out, is there actually a there? Is there actually something visiting us, or having been visiting us, or is there some kind of advanced technology, which I would love to find. But right now, I'm just kind of separating signal from noise.
And also, thank you for your service, because I was raised on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Oh, you're welcome.
Mick West, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.